Hockey card fans, Hockey Night and Bell on back. Today we're going to be looking at another eBay buy that I got. Although these are from the 1973 O-PEE-CHEE set. And I think there's one from the 80s as well. So I have bought from this seller before. And I do know what I'm getting. First up we have Super Action Guy Lafleur. This is from the 1982 set. Card number 195. And it's the dark blue, almost purple set, depending on how you look at it in the light. This set I only need I think 10 cards, and this is one of them. Quality on this one is really good. This set, they kind of the Super Action cards were like extra cards. Guy Lafleur has his own standalone card, and then he has the Super Action card. This is the first year he didn't score 50 goals in a season, mainly because he was hurt. Had a lot of injuries from concerning last playoff. It was the beginning of the end for Guy in Montreal, pretty much. But they made these Super Action cards, and they shouldn't have done it because Bob Gainey got one, and so did Larry Robinson. Every team had at least one Super Action card. They should have just made cards for more guys, because some teams didn't get a lot of players. Like the Colorado Rockies and the Washington Capitals didn't have a lot of players on their team for that year. Next we go into 1972-73 scoring leaders. So Phil Esposito and Bobby Clarke. These are the 1973 set. I don't have a lot of these. Card 135. Phil Esposito had 130 points. Bobby Orr had 101 points. In the Eastern Division and the Western Division, it was Bobby Clarke with 104 and Rick McLeish with 100. So the NHL only had so many teams, and they divide them into East and West divisions. 72-73 assist leaders. Again, Phil Esposito and Bobby Clarke. Esposito had 75 assists, with Orr having 72. And then Bobby Clarke had 67 assists, followed by Pitt Martin from Chicago with 61. So back in those days, Pittsburgh, Chicago, Philadelphia, LA, Minnesota were all in the Western Division. And the Eastern Division had Boston, Buffalo, New York Rangers, Montreal, and Detroit. And other teams. There are other teams, but those are the ones that are on this list. So 2 scoring cards. Next up, Johnny Bucyk, left wing, Boston Bruins. Bucyk was a really good hockey player, Hall of Famer. Won a couple of Stanley Cups with Boston. So this set's very interesting in that the first 120 or 30 cards are all red, and then the last 130 cards are all green. We got Daryl Sittler, center, Toronto Maple Leafs. This is not his rookie card, I don't think. I'd have to check. It's got a slight crease, slight little dent in the corner, and the centering's off, but it's a nice little card. So it's not his rookie card, as he was a rookie, and 71 would be his rookie year. He had 29 goals, 48 assists for 77 points that year. And was the one star the Leafs had that stayed up until the 80s. Everyone else got traded away, well, Salming too. But. Next up, goalie Phil Meyer, Atlanta Flames. He'd been with the Montreal Canadiens, but with a crowded goaltending of Dryden and Rogie Vachon, he was kind of the odd man out and got a trade to the Flames. He went on to play for a lot of teams, St. Louis, Philadelphia. Speaking of which, we got goalie Rogation Vachon, goalie for the Kings. Vachon wasn't going to be the starter behind Dryden, so he requested a trade and got sent out to LA. Montreal had Michel Placé and Wayne Thomas behind them. Vachon would be an all-star with the Kings. Never won a cup. After that, he did win a cup with Montreal, but he played for the Kings and then went on to the Boston Bruins, where he ended his career. We got center Gilbert Perron for the Buffalo Sabres. 28 goals, 60 assists for 88 points. Paul Henderson, left wing for the Leafs, the guy who scored that famous goal in '72. This card's got some damage on the back. He had 18 goals, 16 assists for 34 points that year. He would play a couple more years with Toronto before heading to the WHA. Marcel Dionne, center for Detroit Red Wings. Whenever you think Marcel Dionne, you always think LA Kings, maybe the Rangers, but he started his career with Detroit. Detroit traded him not for much. He had 40 goals, 50 assists for 90 points. Detroit was a terrible team in the 70s. Marcel Dionne was the second round after Lafleur, but he started out much better than Lafleur, point-wise. But Lafleur was playing for defending Stanley Cup champions in his rookie season, and he was also playing behind more talent than Marcel Dionne. Marcel Dionne was with nobody. Marcel Dionne is probably the greatest NHL player never to win a Stanley Cup. Next up, we got quarterfinals. Philadelphia beat the Minnesota North Stars 4-2. This one has a crease in it. Then we got Chicago against St. Louis. Chicago won 4-1. These cards are not in great shape. The New York Rangers beat the Boston Bruins 4-1. The Rangers had an excellent team in the early 70s. Well, the Montreal Canadiens knocked off the Buffalo Sabres 4-2. See Henri Richard in the backdrop there. In the semifinals, Chicago knocked off the Rangers 4-1. Chicago had a really good team in the early 70s. The early 70s, it was Boston, the Rangers, Montreal, and Chicago who were the best teams at the time. Philadelphia was up and coming, and so was Buffalo. And Montreal beat Philadelphia in the semifinals 4-1. Then the Stanley Cup Finals, it was Montreal beating Chicago 4-2. That's Frank Mahovlich. And it has Montreal scored 33 goals for, 23 against. And it gives you a breakdown of the first, second, and third period. Montreal dominated the third period, scoring 14 goals. Chicago only had 3. Yvon Cornway had 6 goals, 6 assists for 12 points. I'm not sure, but I believe he was the Conn Smythe winner that year. And then the last card here is the Stanley Cup champions, Montreal Canadiens, 72-73. And it gives their record, their Stanley Cup champion years. They won 52 games, lost 10, tied 16 for 120 points. This card's also very creased. After this year, after the Stanley Cup playoffs, Dryden semi-retired in a contract dispute that Montreal realized a year later in 73-74 that they needed Dryden, so they caved in, and Dryden came back in 74-75. What could have been, had Dryden stayed, Philadelphia might not have won their 2 cups. There we have it. We got the 1 card for the 1980s, and then we have 17 cards from the 73 set. Like I said, it's an interesting set because the cards go different directions. Some are sideways, and they got red borders and green borders, which is really odd. They only did this the 1 year, then they went back to their traditional format. But we'll put this with the rest. I only have like 70 cards from this set, so this will help, especially getting some of the more expensive cards like Perron and Sittler and Dionne. And we'll put them together and keep collecting whatever I can find. I know I have more cards in the mail from eBay. But any hockey card fans out there, let me know if you guys collect this set, and what do you think of this set? Leave comments in the comment section. Until next time, this has been Hockey Night in Belmont.